Welcome back to Selling Your Business with David King. I'm David King, and I'm the author of Selling Your Business, Begin with the End in Mind. It's available on Amazon. If you haven't subscribed already, please do, and please subscribe to the YouTube channel and give us the highest rating that you can. Today, I am joined by Kirk Mitchie. Kirk is with Candor Advisors in Southern California. He is an M&A advisor who works with business owners kind of before they get rolling on the process of trying to sell their businesses. I've gone through Kirk's credentials. This is the fourth time he's been on our show here. So I've laid it out in detail before, his immense qualifications, and I won't burden you with that now, but please go back and listen to one of the prior podcasts where Kirk has joined us. Kirk, good morning, and thank you for your time.
Thanks, David. It's great to be back.
So today we're going to dive into a subject here that has captivated America in the early 2022, the first half of the year. The major mergers and acquisition event, and it's one that went awry. It was Elon Musk's takeover of Twitter, and the deal's gone bad at this point right now. So Kirk and I are going to try to weave through the events of what happened, the technical aspects of each event, and maybe try to stay away from a lot of the other issues that have gathered the news attention and kind of sucked all the air out of the room, because this was an interesting deal that will be the subject of studies for years to come. So April 4th, let's rewind here. Elon Musk wakes up and realizes that the Tooth Fairy has left 9.2% of Twitter's outstanding common stock under his pillow. So to comply with his legal obligations, he files with the SEC something called a 13D notice that you're supposed to file when you get over 5% of the outstanding shares of any company. But in any case, he files it then, and it puts the world on notice that he's going to buy, or excuse me, puts the world on notice that he owns 9.2% of the company. There must have already been conversations going on, because the same day, Twitter's board reaches out to Elon Musk, makes an offer to give him a board seat. And in exchange for him serving on the board, he would enter into what's called a standstill agreement, agreeing not to acquire more than 14.9% of their outstanding shares. Am I accurate so far there, Kirk?
Yeah, you are. He filed a little bit late, and there's an SEC investigation into that. But let's say that kind of goes away. He filed as if he were a shareholder, like a hedge fund manager or a mutual fund manager, which is to say he was a passive investor. So regardless of whether he'd had any conversations with anybody at Twitter beforehand, and it's, I think, fairly well known that he and Jack Dorsey, the co-founder of Twitter, are friends. So he might have had some sense that he'd be welcome there. It was reasonable and probably smart from a governance standpoint for the board to offer him a board seat because he had filed as a passive investor. It was a reasonable thing to do.
And they may have wished that it wasn't about a complete takeover of the company, and maybe he was just involved, wanted to get involved in setting their policies, voicing his interests, which those are the things that have made their way through the news. But maybe just this board seat would give him enough of a voice at Twitter that would satisfy him and wouldn't need to take over Twitter altogether. Within a few days, though, April 9th, Elon Musk announced, I don't want the board seat. I want to be free to whatever I want to do in terms of acquiring more shares. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. And I think we can infer from that to some extent that whatever conversation they were having about him getting involved in governance, Elon Musk is, he's paid a $20 million SEC fine because he once used Twitter to say that he was taking Tesla private and he had the funding secured. He didn't. And I mean, he's a guy that sort of, his own board has a hard time reining him in. So it's easy to imagine that he had a conversation with Twitter's board or CEO about what he would do as a board member. And he probably didn't like the idea that he had to, you know, kind of go along with other people or collaborate. So, yeah, I mean, it's pretty reasonable to you know, kind of to think that conversation didn't go well.
Well, I mean, come on, Elon is younger than both of us here, so he's a young buck. That's a young man out there. He's 1 year younger than me, but you know, it's hard to control us young guys out there. So moving forward a little bit, he says, I don't want the board seat. And then Twitter takes action on their own here. On or around April 13th, Twitter's board adopts what's called a rights plan, where every shareholder gets an agreement to where they may exercise. It's also known as a poison pill. I helped companies adopt these back when I worked in Silicon Valley, and it's somewhat of a defensive measure for the benefit of the shareholders here, that we're not going to allow a takeover that's going to be in the shareholders' bad interests here. Around the same time that they adopted this rights plan, Elon Musk tweeted something to the effect of "Love me tender," and he wasn't just showing his, you know, adornment of Elvis. He was referring to making a tender offer, which is a different type of takeover, where you go directly to the shareholders, you set a price, and you buy up shares directly in the open market.
Yeah.
Am I correct in that?
Yeah, I think your intuition and that of and the inference from other people, you know, who followed the deal, saw what he was doing there. And I mean, look, there's there's precedent. You got to go back a ways, but you know, around 40 years ago, there was a guy named David Murdoch who was a exceptionally wealthy real estate developer in Los Angeles, an early, you know, member of the Forbes 400 list, who was on the board of a company called Castle and Cook that owned Dole Pineapple. And he didn't like the way they were running the company. He was supposed to be, you know, he was a shareholder and he was supposed to be a collaborative board member. And they didn't like what he thought about the way they were running the company. They voted him off the board. And, you know, about 15 minutes later in you know, corporate years, he launched a tender offer to buy the company. You know, in a sense, if you don't like my ideas and you're not going to run the board the way I want to run it, I'll buy you, right? Which is, I mean, Musk is the wealthiest man on the planet and arguably is good at doing certain things. He's a great product creator. And let's remember, Twitter is a product. And so, and it's never been very commercially successful as a business. He was offering, well, it's never been that successful as a business, you know, in terms of profitability. So, you know, who knows? Maybe he had some great ideas for how to make it a better company.
When I helped companies adopt poison pills around, you know, 2000, 2001, most of these companies, a lot of them, the reason they were doing so is because they had more cash in the bank than their total market capitalization. So you got more cash in the bank. We're sitting here, we got, you know, $1 billion in the bank, but our total outstanding shares may only be worth $700 million. So these were purely defensive measures here that were also in the shareholders' best interest. We don't want somebody to come in and buy us here and then get all that cash. We're worth, you know, more than our net assets here. With regards to this particular poison pill and their, you know, clear indication that what they really wanted was to prevent the takeover by Elon Musk. Do you think that if they had gone the distance and that was the thing that prevented Musk from taking over the company, and no matter how high he raised his offer, could they have run into some fiduciary problems with their shareholders if some shareholder brought a suit and said, look, we could have gotten a lot more for this, but you just didn't want Elon Musk to be the one to take us over?
Sure. I think, part of the reason that this is so compelling, and part of the reason that it's gotten so much press attention is, one, Musk is the richest man in the world, and he's sort of like the Tony Stark or Iron Man of our times, right? And so he's a colorful figure. He now has 9 children by several different women. He's a compelling figure. And the other thing too to remember is that like human beings run companies. CEO might work for the board of directors, but boards, in some cases, you'd want them to be even-handed and practice pure governance without emotion involved, and you'd want the CEO to do what's best for the company. But there could easily be a viewpoint that we're not letting that guy take this business and do what he wants, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, look, it's maybe a little bit of both, right?
Yeah. And actually, I get my dates just slightly off there. April 13th is the date that Elon Musk sent his letter to the board saying, this is the offer I want to make. I want to acquire all the shares for cash, $54.20 per share, $44 billion valuation. And it was on April 15th, after they had this offer in hand, that they adopted the rights plan. So you think that $44 billion valuation might be kind of stratospheric?
I do. And, part of that is that, like, look, I mean, the company was worth between 25 and 30 billion in terms of market cap before he made the offer. So he does this clever nod towards cannabis, with it being 54.20, 420 being, kind of the 20 days celebrating in Canada. So, he does that. So that's the, very, very kind of on brand with Musk. And then offering, $44 billion for a company that in the best and most generous possible accounting makes close to $1 billion a year of transferable economics for EBITDA. Yeah. So he's offering 44 times EBITDA. To put that in perspective, solid businesses sold in the private markets, trade 8 to 12 times EBITDA in a frothy M&A environment. So 44 times, that's a hell of a valuation. The board, quite frankly, should have just said, if you've got the financing and you can do the deal, right? It's a fantastic offer.
And that was the issue. If you've got the financing, so Twitter, or rather, Musk comes through with commitment letters showing that he's got the financing to back it, both some debt financing and some equity financing. And this letter is still sitting there. His offer is sitting there as a proposal to Twitter's board. So we fast forward, and on April 27th, Twitter, their management, and Elon Musk execute a merger agreement. And the merger agreement, it sounds like the effect of the deal was all the shareholders today get cash at this price. You're merging with what? A merger is company A merges with company B, and the two become company A. Company B just goes away. So in this case here, envision this. You're having a garage sale, and there's one big valuable treasure chest in the middle of your garage, and you and a bunch of neighbors own it together. Elon Musk grabs or drives his pickup truck into your backyard, or rather into your driveway. He's got a crate inside the back of his truck. Inside that crate, there's another box, say just a trunk, wooden trunk. And all around that wooden trunk, there's cash, billions of cash. So then the lawyers come out, abracadabra, okay? Wave the wand, And the Twitter treasure chest turns into the plain one that Elon Musk has in the back of his truck. But then all that cash winds up in the hands of your neighbors, and everybody is happy. Elon closes his crate, drives away, and now instead of all that cash, he's now got Twitter. But that is basically that is how a reverse triangular merger works. I'm not sure I'll get offers from any high level business in the schools to teach that, but that's anyway, that's my explanation for it. Is it was a reverse triangular merger. Anything you would add to that in terms of the deal terms or the way to look at that deal?
Yeah, so I think you broke down a complicated thing. Well, it's a tricky thing to kind of understand, and there had to be legal reasons that they made the offer that way and didn't just do a traditional letter of intent to buy the company with a combination of cash and structure, right? So there had to be some reason that it was done that way. And look, the board did what they should have done under the circumstances, which was to say, if you want the asset that bad, we're going to accept the agreement, but we're going to put some hooks into the agreement because, not for nothing, Elon, but we've been watching you kind of flit around from flower to flower for a while, and it's not clear that you follow through on things you say you're going to do. So here's what's going to happen, right? And they essentially start to turn this thing into a definitive agreement right at the outset. Before diligence is done, there's $1 billion breakup fee in the thing, and they're forcing him to remove financing contingency very quickly, because the thing is, whether Musk is worth 100 billion or a half a trillion, the reality is he's probably got access to $50 million of cash, and then the rest of it is Tesla, SpaceX, and other shares. So he's going to have to lever those shares. He didn't have that kind of cash,
right?
And even if he uses all of his leverage capability, he's still going to have to come up with a bunch more equity. So getting financing done at that point is not a layup, even for the richest man in the world, because $44 billion is just a truckload of dough, right?
Yeah. So now we've got a merger agreement, and it's been several months. Now, deals don't close the next day, as you're mentioning. There's financing, there is due diligence, there's they've got to get the shareholders to approve this thing. Twitter does. He's going through now and claiming that he's not getting what he needs to complete his due diligence, claiming that Twitter is in breach, and saying he's got a right to walk away. Is that a fair assessment of, and in addition to some other allegations he's throwing out?
It's a fair assessment of what he's saying, which is a bit disingenuous when you're like, look, due diligence is a deep dive into the company, but it's a public company. So the information is out there in 10Ks and 10Qs and annual reports. And they've got a Big Four accounting firm doing their financials, and so sure, he had more access than the public markets do. But if you decide you're going to walk away from a deal that's got the kind of repercussions of walking away that this one does, you definitely have to come up with some stuff to say, these are kind of extraordinary things that in the course of due diligence I found that caused me to be able to walk away from this deal, right? And so that's what he's done.
Right. And he's making more of a claim that he's not getting the information that he needs to make the determination about the spam and the bots, the fake accounts that are on Twitter's platform. And I've got a copy of the merger agreement, the boring part here. He's making the merger agreement allows him reasonable access to all information concerning the business, the properties and personnel